Well, hello everybody. Welcome to another live stream on the History podcast. And today I'm joined by Dr. Kipp Davis and Dr. Dan McClellan. And today we're going to be discussing Dr. Scott Stripling's claims regarding the Mount Ebal Curse tablet. And before we discuss the problems of what with Scott's position, I'd like for you both to briefly recap on what exactly the Mount Ebal Curse tablet is, the claims surrounding it. Briefly for anyone watching this that may never have heard of it before.
Sure. I don't know. Shall I go, or do you want to do this, Dan?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So, I think it was probably about 2 years ago now. Scott Stripling, who is an archaeologist working with the Associates for Biblical Research, I think is the outfit. They were doing a wet sifting project in the debris piles at Mount Ebal, where back in the 1980s, Adam Zertal had excavated a remarkable structure. It's an enormous. It's been interpreted by most people as an altar platform, but it's enormous, far and away the largest one in Israel, among the largest ones on Earth. But it within these debris piles, he and his team discovered a tiny square. It's a folded rectangular object made of lead, measuring 2 centimeters by 4 centimeters in total. When it's folded, it's 2 by 2. And he claimed that it contained a Proto-Hebrew script that dated back to the late Bronze Age, and had this thing reviewed by a couple of epigraphers. I believe it was Gershom Galil and Peter van der Veen. Was there another epigrapher, or was it just those two?
I think it was just those two.
Okay.
Van der Veen and Gershom Galil. Yeah, just the two.
Yeah. So they provided readings of this tablet, and identified it as a defixio, or a curse tablet. I actually have the text right here. I can read for you what their translation was. Their translation was, "You are cursed by the god Yahweh, cursed. You will die, cursed. Cursed you will surely die. Cursed you are by Yahweh, cursed." Now, they announced this finding shortly after the discovery. It was during COVID. The publication of it took another year, I think, and when it finally came out, there was a collective thudding sigh of disappointment from the scholarly community, because when you look at the images of the curse tablet itself, there's honestly, there's just nothing there. You squint hard, you look diligently, and you might be able to make out some of the shapes that the epigraphers have interpreted as letters, but it mostly just looks like striations and scratches and natural elements of wear on the lead surface. So it's been widely criticized by the scholarly community. It was last year, I think it was just in the fall, that Christopher Rolston, Amahai Mazar, and who's the third author? They published a series of articles in the Israel Exploration Journal, basically.
Aaron was
yeah,
one of them.
Thank you. I said Mazar, didn't I?
Amahai Mazar was one of them as well.
Oh, he was. And then there's one more here too. I'm just pulling it up. Nama
Yahalomak.
That's the one, Yahalomak. Okay, so they published a series of critical responses, laying out the details of why scholars have come to reject this reading by Stripling and his team. So, anything more to say about it, Dan?
No, that's pretty much everything. I recall when they, released the original paper, they showed the scans from which they were purporting to lift these readings, and somebody showed that even if you did accept that these contours and scratches were actual letters, to actually get the reading that they proposed, you had to take a twisting and turning and circuitous and crossing routes to put them together in a way that spells out the reading that they promoted, which is just nonsensical.
Yeah,
when it comes to these texts.
It's nuts. In the article itself, Stripling cited the presence of Bostrophodon text. These are, so the Bostrophodon basically just means as the ox plows. So, letters following a pattern of going one direction and then turning around and going the opposite direction, back and forth like that. This tablet is not that. The letters are literally like scrolling around everywhere. It produced some quality memes on Twitter.
Yeah.
So I'm going to play this part of the video, the last video I did with Scott, in which he gave a response there. And he has given responses elsewhere as well, many times, about the criticisms he's faced. Let me get to the part real quick. We basically talk about it very quickly into the video. Yeah, so some will say that the Mount Ebal Curse tablet has no legible writing on it at all, and that the translations done on it are just therefore rendered useless and completely meaningless. How do you respond to that criticism?
I sympathize to a degree. You have to understand that we read these tomographically, so we were not able to see with our own eyes. We had to use tomographic scans, which took us a long time to acclimate and to learn how to. We were being guided by our scholars in Prague, Czechoslovakia, to be able to see the different slices, and which some letters are visible in some slices, some are not in other slices. I was told by 3 epigraphers, one in Prague, and then one in Germany, and then one in Israel, that they all 3 saw these ancient letters. Based on that, then we attempted to decipher the text and give the best reading that we could. I think perhaps many who have been critical, it's because they're taking a cursory look at it, whereas we had the benefit of many months of studying this intensively to be able to discern these letters that were there. It makes no sense to have a defixio if there's not writing on it. That's the whole point of a curse tablet or a
So I'll just stop there for a second. So he says that it makes no sense, what a kind of criticism it faced because of something called a defixio. Could y'all talk about that? What kind of angle is he trying to take there?
A decidedly circular one, because he says it makes no sense to have a curse tablet if there's no writing on it, but the only thing that would indicate it's a curse tablet is their interpretation of the writing on it. So the notion that just this piece of lead absent any legible writing is demonstrably or even plausibly a curse tablet is not supported by any data. And so the argument that, well, it has to be writing because it's a curse tablet, and we know it's a curse tablet because the writing says it's a curse tablet, is just circular reasoning. One piece of evidence is supported by the piece of evidence that the other piece of evidence supports. It's and I think I've seen others who've suggested the lead better fits the form and function of probably a fishing weight, a lead weight that would have been used for fishing.
Yeah, I think this is one of this is Mazar's article in the Israel Exploration Journal response. He's posited that it looks most like a fishing weight. Now I don't know if you've queued up Stripling's responses to Mazar's criticisms, his claims about it being a fishing weight. Have you, Jacob? Because if you have, we can deal with it there.
I don't recall if that was in the same video that I did with him. It said it was a response to the fishing weight.
Yep.
Oh wait, yes it is there. It's at 38 minutes in. Okay.
Sure. Okay. So when we get there, we can talk some about that. But yeah, it's yeah. Just to be clear, the reason Mazar has forwarded this explanation is because when you do actually look at, you know, the dozens upon dozens of examples of fishing weights, lead fishing weights that have been excavated from around the Mediterranean, most of them come from the Aegean. They do bear a remarkable similarity and resemblance to what was discovered on Mount Ebal. So, I mean, I just on the basis of its straightforward appearance, it seems like as good an explanation as any for what this object is.
If you want, I can take us to 38 minutes in to get straight to the fishing part, or we can just
unless there's other. Yeah, I think we just go through go through it as you have it queued up. We can deal with that when we get there.
So all I'll do for now is I'll just get back to the part where try to finish the part where he addresses the criticism on the Ebal tablet, and then we'll go to the fish part.
Okay.
And then we're going to, in the second part,
Sure.
Let me, I think this is where we were.
Sympathize to a degree. You have to understand that we read these.
And then we're going to, in the second part,
if there's not writing on it. That's the whole point of a curse tablet or a defixio.
and then some others will either add to that or say separately that the archaeology that was done or the circumstances of discovery and publication regarding the tablet, that the whole thing has been mishandled and not handled properly. What is your response to that?
I think that's kind of a silly argument for someone to make. Let's deal with it on the basis of what's there. Either you see it, and if you do, you can have a different view on the interpretation, or if you don't see it, you can argue that. But the circumstances are we've been through that many times. We had a legal permits to do what we did. We published this in a peer-reviewed journal, so I wouldn't put much weight in those particular objections.
So I'll just stop it right there. If you have comments on what he said there, or
well, I mean, I can say as someone who is, quite concerned about the ethics and the legality and the licitness of handling antiquities, I do think there are some legitimate criticisms and concerns here in terms of the handling of the artifact itself, its discovery, and then that's to say nothing also of the publicized the popularization of it prior to its publication. you know, just to give people an idea, Mount Ebal is located in the West Bank. It's located specifically in Area B, which of the West Bank, which is under Palestinian control, but also has an Israeli police presence for dealing with I think in particular for dealing with cultural heritage. One of the big problems, however, is that what Stripling and his team were doing. He's noted this in several of his other interviews. Is they were moving the debris piles from the site itself in Zone B out of the West Bank altogether, and they did all the sifting at an Israeli settlement that was nearby. Now, as somebody who has, or I should say, when you talk to archaeologists about best practices, one of the things that they're very, very careful to do is meticulous cataloging, tagging, and documentation of the areas in which items are found and moved. And it in some of his responses, it does feel like Dr. Stripling has certainly not publicly conveyed the sense of a proper handling of the material. And then, in addition to that, it was actually taken out of the country to be tested in Prague after its discovery. And I know there are open questions about even the legality of something like that having taken place. The Israel Antiquities Authority has some pretty strict, some of the most stringent rules with regards to the handling of material culture.
Dan, did you want to say anything about it? Or
I think Kipp covered it all quite well. I think there are concerns that haven't been adequately addressed, have been kind of evaded and dismissed as not serious concerns, but they come from some of the leading archaeologists in the field, and there are obviously geopolitical stakes involved in this that are generally not being recognized or not taken seriously, which I think is just an attempt to fly under the radar. Because this has significance to the heritage of that site, and therefore if this turns out to be Joshua's altar, as Dr. Stripling thinks it is, then that's going to incentivize that the Israeli state to take a second look at the administration of that area. And that could cause significant harm to folks who have been living there for a long, long time.
so now I'm going to move to the part where he argues that I think this is the part where he argues that the Ebal Curse tablet calls into question the documentary hypothesis.
This is one of my
Students are
favorite
taught-
parts.
A second.
This is what students are taught, and it's essentially that you have different sources that exist, a J, an E, a D, and a P source, and that these are redacted. They're edited into one source, maybe in the time of Josiah at the earliest, or the Hellenistic period at the latest. So maybe 1,000 years or so after Moses, which means that you don't have eyewitness accounts. We're not dealing with eyewitness testimony, whereas many of us have rejected that, and now this seems to support our view that indeed we do have eyewitness accounts. There was an alphabet with which Moses and Joshua would have been able to write, and there was a higher degree of literacy in early Israel than we have previously thought.
So I'll stop right there.
You
Who wants to go
Dan.
first on that?
Well, I'm reminded that Gershon Galil also provided a pretty provocative reading of the Kirbet Kiafa Ostrakhan, which has some very early writing on it as well. And he basically read it as a quotation from Deuteronomy. And his reading was highly critical. But I mean, the Associates for Biblical Research, if you go look at their website, their banner says a Christian apologetics ministry dedicated to demonstrating the historical reliability of the Bible through archaeological and biblical research. So they have an open commitment to the accuracy of the text, which means they're already they stand on principle opposed to most of critical scholarship, including obviously the documentary hypothesis or any other source critical theory about the Pentateuch. And so of course, this would be immediately interpreted as a defense of Mosaic authorship. But the problem is it's not evidence until you can demonstrate it's not even probable, but just plausible that this is an actual text that was written in this time period. And if this turns out to be, it's not, but if this had any chance of turning out to be actual writing, it would, my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, Kipp, is that Dr. Stripling is an advocate for an early date for the Exodus and the conquest.
That's correct, yeah.
Yeah, so most apologists advocate either for a 1400s-ish date for the Exodus and the conquest, or a 1200-ish date for the Exodus and the conquest. He's advocating for an early one. And that's long before we have evidence of writing like this in alphabetic writing in this time and place. And so it would undermine the scholarly consensus about the development of Semitic writing in the alphabet. And so there's just so much that has to be overcome for this to do what these folks want it to do. And they're not addressing the concerns, and they're not presenting a particularly strong argument.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they want people to be convinced, not by the strength of the argument, but by the impact and significance and implications of the argument. If they're sharing all this, then the people who really want that to be the case are going to be more inclined to accept a weaker argument. But folks who are not committed to demonstrating the historical reliability of the Bible, it's an argument that is bordering on laughable.
Yeah, it really is. The way when this was first announced a couple of years ago, my approach to the news was one of, and this is the way I kind of look at this, right? Because Scott Stripling has gone so far as to say this basically makes the case for he says it right there in your interview with him, eyewitness testimony to the Exodus. Gershon Galil in the press conference where they announced the findings said that the tablet exhibited the hand of a genius. He said you could tell that this man was a charismatic leader. There are a total of 8 original letters in their transcription of the tablet. It's I think 6 words. You know, to get from in the first place, to get from a ritual object like a defixio with a formulaic text on it, comprised of just repeated words and phrases, to a magisterial composition like the Torah or the Pentateuch is just an enormous stretch. It's a huge leap. One does not equal the other. But let's say we did find a 13th, 14th, 15th century lead defixio with text on it at Mount Ebal in the form of a curse and invoking the name of Yahweh. What does this do for us? As Dan mentioned, you know, we have to then recalculate and make some reconsiderations about current consensus scholarship regarding the emergence of Hebrew script, Hebrew language, and the appearance of Yahweh and Yahweh worship in the land of Israel. But that's it. You know, this does not validate the site as the place where Joshua offered sacrifices and the Israelites hurled blessings and curses back at one another, you know, on the in the Jezreel Valley. It doesn't do that. I can think of a perfectly legitimate alternative explanation which sees this as first a ritual site of some sort that then became a contributing feature in the story of, you know, hurling blessings and curses to one another in the Jezreel Valley. There's more than one way to read this kind of evidence. And while yes, certain scholars are always going to take the positivistic approach to this kind of evidence, cautious researchers are not just going to jump to those conclusions. Did that make any sense?
I thought it did. Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. Can I?
Yeah, go ahead.
Were you planning on showing images of the tablet? Because I've got images pulled up, including the image showing the path that you have to follow to read to arrive at their reading.
Mm-hmm.
Were you planning on showing the images?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, then I'll just wait for when you get to that point.
I can get the image right now. 1 second. All right. Just give me 1 second. I'll have it up right now.
I prepared. I got it. I got it up here too. So.
All right, so I'm going to put the slide up here real quick. I'm not sure if it's the exact image that we're talking about, but it's one of them.
So I've got the tomographic cut or slice from the article, and then also Galil's drawing of the characters, and then as well someone overlaying the order that you would have to go to read these characters. If you
want, that I don't have in front of me.
Okay, give me 1 second and I will. If you, I'm gonna just say, do I have the ability to share?
Yeah, it should let you. Yeah.
Okay, then let me just pull it up. Okay, so first is the tomographic slice here.
There it is.
Okay, so basically they've done these scans, and each scan is only so thick, and then they've gone from the top to the bottom through the bottom, and it's kind of like an MRI. They're just a bunch of layers, and this is the layer where they think the writing is the clearest. And so here's what Gershon Galil suggested. I gotta take that down and bring. So if you recall what that looked like, here is his drawing of the characters isolated. So this is supposed to be a collection, and you'll see there's some black ones, and then up in the upper left some gray ones. He suggests those are letters on a different layer. But that is the reconstruction of the different characters. And if you look closely at these, these obviously look like somewhat stereotypical versions of some Proto-Semitic characters. But here is the order that you have to read these in order to arrive at the interpretation that they arrived at. So you've got to start with the yellow A equals 1 at the bottom left. And you're going to go up and to the left, up and to the right, then to the left. Then you're going to go up toward the top, loop around, come back down to the right, back up. And then you're going to squiggle a few different directions before looping over to under the right side, come down, and then swoop back up a few times before circling back, and then you can see the arrow ending kind of just below the middle of the image. So that's how you have to read this to arrive at this this reading that they have proposed. So I have never seen a text that was intended to be read that way, or that could be legitimately read that way.
Nothing even close. It defies logic.
And if I may pull up that scan again, if you don't mind, Jacob, I'm sorry for
hijacking
your show.
It's fine.
If you you can actually play a GIF. And by the way, that is the correct pronunciation. Don't give me any crap about that.
It certainly is.
You can play a GIF of all these slices animated. So you're kind of going down to the bottom. And you can see that these are contours inside the lead, little bumps and cracks. I mean, it's not difficult to discern what are cracks from what are just bumps in the contours on the surface and interior to the lead, and interpreting these as characters. Like they said, they took months to try to create characters in here, and that was kind of the argument that, oh, you're just giving it a cursory glance. We spent months coming up with this reading. It doesn't mean that like weakens your argument.
In fact, the word pareidolia comes to mind, right? Like this is the phenomenon where if you're squinting hard enough and you're looking intently enough, you can start to see things, in bunnies in the clouds and patterns, in the rocks or in the snow or what have you, right? And I would argue that this is probably part of the problem. I kind of see this. I'm sympathetic because, I'm someone who has spent most of my career looking at ancient manuscripts and working out some really, really difficult to see, difficult to read texts on artifacts. So yes, usually it does take time to sort out what you're looking at, but on the other side of this too, When you're sitting with the same object, with the same text for months and months and months and months, you really do start to convince yourself of things that may not necessarily be there, which is why it's so important to have, this process of peer review and our learned colleagues to correct the errors that we make if we have, put too much of our own wishful thinking into our readings.
And from the cognitive science side of this, like we're designed to recognize patterns and to find patterns, and we have our subconscious mind is structured to tell us what we're perceiving in order to kind of meet certain subconscious needs. And if we have a dogmatic commitment to certain identities and to certain things, our subconscious mind is going to push us in the direction of that. And this is one of the things this is one of the reasons a lot of people were critical about the fact that they held a press conference and a press release long before there was any publication ready or had been accepted anywhere,
They
because
already made coffee mugs and T-shirts and everything. Like it was.
it primes the target audience. Because if you find something at Joshua's altar and you're part of an organization that exists to demonstrate that the Bible is true, that is high stakes stuff. And if you sit there and you're staring at this and subconsciously this means the world to you and means a lot to your livelihood as well, once you see a pattern, you are not going to unsee that pattern. And once you have decided that pattern is there, then everyone who doesn't see it is fooling themselves. And when they preemptively announce this, that primes everyone who is just looking for an excuse to believe this is true to feel like it is, so that once the criticisms come out, they can the defensive walls are already up. And I can't say that that's all calculated, that they intentionally wanted to kind of prime their target audience to accept this as an actual inscription from 1400 BCE, long before they had any article written up, much less submitted to a journal. But that's the effect of it, is that it primes folks so that they see the pattern. And once somebody tells you you're making that up, it is nonsensical to them because they have seen the pattern and they cannot unsee it. So there's a lot going on under the hood of apologetics like this that is harmful and problematic.
And since you mentioned Joshua's altar, I'm going to point out that the very next part of the video I'm going to be playing is actually about Joshua's altar.
All right.
Because he has something to say about that too. Let me just get to the part where he brings it up properly. Okay, this should be good. About
was close.
I went a little far too back
Rectangular
there.
altar. Underneath, there was a smaller 2x2 meter round altar that he believed was the primogenial ritual site, or if you will, Joshua's altar on Mount Ebal. He excavated the site. That was his belief, made that known, and unfortunately, he died before final publications. What my team did in December of 2019 was to go back and to wet sift the dump pile that he had left behind. We did not do any actual excavation. We just processed the garbage, or the dump, if you will, that he left behind. And in that is where we found what we believe is a defixio with very early Hebrew writing on it.
One of the problems with wet sifting a dump pile is you have no context. This could have been from anywhere from 1400 down to the Roman period or after. All we know is that it was somewhere in everything that was dug up, and so it makes it harder to establish a provenance for or at least a date for what's going on here, which is one of the things that makes it easier for people who find something like this to be like, oh yeah, it's from this time period, the most helpful time period for us. That's where it's from. And so there are those who suggest that it fits a Roman time period better. And there's not really an argument you can make against that, because it was not found in situ. It was found in a pile of rubble.
I think Bob Cargill actually made this point in one of his responses to the find early on. Zertal was digging in the 1980s. Those dump piles have been sitting there for 30 years. There's really nothing preventing someone from tossing something into a dump pile, and it's sitting there for months, years, decades before being picked up in this wet sifting operation. This is part of why it's so very important to be just absolutely meticulous in your documenting of the finds of the site of what you're doing.
And can you correct me if I'm wrong, Kipp? Didn't Zertal arrive at a different conclusion about the altar that Stripling wants to identify as Joshua's altar? Am I mistaken on that?
No, he identified the small. There's supposedly a small altar, a small round altar at the center of this enormous structure, that he did identify with Joshua's altar.
Okay.
And then said that the structure was constructed as a memorial on top of it. I have some questions about that, and we, as far as I know, the official reports on that were not published. One of the things that Zertal did do, because I think it's worth pointing out here as well, the location of this altar is actually on the I'm gonna get this wrong. It's like it's basically on the opposite side of Mount Ebal from the Jezreel Valley, facing Mount Gerizim.
Okay.
So and this has been one of the criticisms as well, is that, you know, if this is indeed Joshua's altar, then why on earth is it, you know, on the other side of the mountain? And Zertal's response to that, what he chose to do was to identify the mountain on the other side of Mount Ebal as Mount Gerizim. So he basically
he just reversed the order.
Yeah. So, which is sure. I mean, it happens on occasion where, you know, our geographical labels for things will shift over time, but this is an idea that has been picked up by virtually no one in the field. This was clearly Zertal's hope at trying to provide a plausible response to the criticism about the location of the altar, but yeah, it's not been widely picked up. I'll say one more thing about the actual site itself that he excavated. There are one of the features beyond just the structure itself. There's placements. There's these formation of rocks that ring the entire site, and they appear in the shape of almost like a human foot. And one of the interesting things about this particular site is there are, I believe, at least 6 or 7 other cult sites across Israel and Palestine that have this same manufactured stone border formation in the shape of a foot. And I think this is quite interesting. To me, this is one of the more interesting features of the actual site itself. Is it does seem to indicate that this was a cult site, and not necessarily a unique cult site, but one that served a function that was known even more broadly across the region. So that's an aside, but I think some of these are actually the more important features. Thanks to Zertal and now thanks to Stripling, we've spent so much time focusing our efforts and on our attention on Joshua, on the curse tablet, the function of the altar itself, that I think we're missing some of the more significant features of this as really a Canaanite cult place, relative and similar to other Canaanite cult places that have been discovered from the region.
There's a comment from a paper published in 2014. S.L. Richter, that's Sandra Richter, right? Probably.
Yeah.
Okay. Says, although Adam Zertal's interpretation of Area A as an altar in the design of Exodus 20 has received virtually no acceptance at this point, there is broad agreement that Zertal has identified evidence of Iron 1 cultic activity on Mount Ebal, which is, I think, important. And I agree with you. We're missing the forest for the trees if this is only significant as Joshua's altar rather than evidence of widespread and what might be systematic cultic activity from a very early time period.
So now we're going to get to the part where he talks about the fishing weight. This is about where.
And Jacob, I'd like to go back, if we could, for a minute to the Mount Ebal tablet.
Sure.
And some of the criticisms you're asking me about. And if I could, I'll just briefly address some of the main things. Ami Mazar published an article on IEJ claiming that this was actually a fishing weight, or what he called a sinker. And in his article, he presented 333 examples of fishing weights, and from type A, and then 331 were type A and 2 were type B. And he claims that the Mount Ebal is similar to the type B, which is where you have supposedly 2 examples. But the 2 examples, and he used, of course, they come from the coast, Tel El Ajul near Gaza, whereas the Mount Ebal is in the highlands, and he admits that it is problematic for his view. So he only has 2 examples that he's basing this theory on that fit, and both of those have grooves in them where the line went through. This Mount Ebal tablet does not. So it's not on the coast, it doesn't have the grooves, and it's in no way similar to the 2 examples. So it seems like a lot of evidence when you're talking about 333, but then he subdivides it into Class A and Class B, and Class B only has 2, and neither one of them are like the Mount Ebal tablet. So that would very briefly be my response to Ami Mazar, who, by the way, I respect very much.
Sorry. So, I mean, the thing that I find striking about this argument that Stripling is making, that it's almost certainly not a fishing weight because the type is so rare in the region. He said they've only found 2 in all of Israel. How many defixios have they found in Israel? Like, as far as I am aware, lead defixios at that. As far as I'm aware, this is the only one. Like, it doesn't. It's not a question that I think clearly they haven't thought through carefully or clearly enough especially when leveling this criticism at Mazar for interpreting it as a fishing weight.
And I don't think I've tracked down all of the examples of fishing weights, but here's an example that there are some that have been put on display. These are from Crete, which is off the coast a little ways, but if you'll recall what the tablet itself looked like. Can you share that? There we go. These look awfully similar. And I mean, if you had this many,
this is why Mazar has made this suggestion, right?
Yeah. And if he had this many curse tablets that looked exactly like this from the right time period, he would have slam dunked that paper in everyone's face. This would have put it beyond any possible shadow of any possible doubt. But the notion that, these have grooves in them where the lines went through, therefore it can't have been that. I mean, these bear quite striking resemblance to the little tiny piece of folded over lead that is square. Although most of these have probably spent centuries underwater. And I don't know where these were found, but or I don't know precise context for these, but the corrosion there looks like they probably spent an awful lot of time underwater rather than sitting on a mountain.
It might be interesting if somebody could find some money to run some tomographic scans on
see what kind
some
of
of the
text we can find there.
Let's see what sorts of text we could discover in there. I bet we would, come up with a few.
I bet we could find the complete works of Shakespeare if we looked for long enough in there.
You look hard enough.
Yeah.
And so, in reality, what is this thing that they're calling the Mount Ebal tablet? Because it doesn't have real writing on there. It's not what Scott claims it is. So what is it exactly in reality?
We don't know.
I think the best we can do is say,
right?
Here are the possible things that it could be, and then hierarchize them according to what makes the most sense of the data. But I think what makes the least sense, based on all the proposals, is that this is a 3,400-year-old curse tablet with tricky writing all over the inside of it.
If I could actually just say one more thing, because this is something I don't think Dr. Stripling has adequately addressed. In my opinion, probably I mean, beyond the fact of the ridiculous appearance and the nonsensical script and text that's been interpreted from it. In my opinion, some of the most damning counter evidence to this was provided by my friend, the great epigrapher at George Washington University, Christopher Rolston, in his article responding to Stripling's publication. He notes that within Iron Age Israel, there is not I'm pretty sure this is the case. There is not a single text out of everything that has been discovered which retains what he calls interior materis lectionis. This is a highly technical term. Materis lectionis are vowel letters, as I assume a lot of people are aware. Hebrew is a consonantal language. It doesn't have vowel letters in the script, but in later periods of Hebrew writing, scribes started to add some helping letters, vovs, yods, most commonly, hays. These are called materas lectionis. Significantly, in the entirety of epigraphic samples from basically the 10th century all the way through, I believe he says, the 6th century BCE, there is not a single example of a vowel letter taking place inside of a word. And on this curse tablet, every single instance of arur, which is the Hebrew word for curse, is spelt with the materas lectionis, the vav,
The vav.
inside the word. It's, this would be the anomaly. And I know when Dr. Stripling has addressed this this criticism of his work, he's come back and suggested that because Christopher Rolston is the one who has compiled the data, he's the one who's gone out and read all the inscriptions and published them. He thinks that this is some form of self referential argument from authority, which is just silly, because I mean, the data's there. All Chris did was the very, very hard, painstaking, meticulous work of compiling it and publishing it. So,
and building our collective understanding of the development of alphabetic scripts. Like, Chris is one of the leaders in that field, and for him to say, "Oh, you're just promoting your own work," as if that indicates some kind of bias. But yeah, if that holds, like, not only does that mean Hebrew existed centuries before we currently think Hebrew first got off the ground, but this much later epigraphic feature also pre-existed by even longer. It's showing up in the material record, and the textual record is just there. And this is something I've commented about frequently in apologetics. You don't follow the data in apologetics. You start with a conclusion in mind, and then you skirt around the data and try to chart a course that shows the data don't make your connecting of the dots impossible. And this is one of those things, because everybody's got to be wrong about everything so that this can be possible. And that is just such a tiny, tiny, tiny little sliver of not impossible. But for an awful lot of folks, that's all they need.
It's enough.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, thank you both for joining me today. This was fun, and yeah, these are
you have to drink. You have to drink every time I say tiny little sliver of not impossible. Somebody commented that on a video of mine once.
Yeah, in fact, Derek was in here commenting earlier. I'll pull up a couple of things he said real quick. Here it is.
I'm reminded of one of his favorite video clips, Derek Lambert at Mythvision, that he likes to play. He likes to play that clip from the great movie Dumb and Dumber. So you're telling me there's a chance, right?
That guy in the middle looks like a suffering messiah who's full of errant rank nonsense.
I don't know if you're there's an inside joke here, but apparently while I just got back from a holiday, got a new toque, and while I was away, the Godless Engineer published a video where he selected clips from an interview he did with the great rabbinic scholar Daniel Boyarin. and cleverly, artfully crafted them in such a way that has Professor Boyarin calling my work errant rank nonsense.
Oh, I thought you were going to say he rickrolled everybody. But
yeah,
that would probably take a lot more more footage.
It probably would. It probably would. So it's very amusing.
The tablet is real. It's written by Joshua himself.
Apparently, Gershon Galil has taken over Derek's account.
You guys just want to sin.
Want to sin? I thought that everybody just wanted to sin.
That's what makes sin fun, isn't it? That's the whole point. It's why you got to avoid it.
Well, like I said, thank you both for joining me. This was great, and yeah, this is very powerful reasons for rejecting the Ebal tablet.
Hello viewers, thanks for watching this video from the History Valley YouTube channel. Please don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell. And if any of you wish to further support this channel, please consider checking out this channel's Patreon page and becoming a patron. And or donate through PayPal or through Super Chat during your live stream. Thank you.